Can we start? I'm going to speak on Serbian because we are in Serbian parliament, you know. But I think everything is prepared with translation. We are ready. Everything is okay with headphones. Okay.
Distinguished Speaker of the Parliament, actually of the National Assembly of the Republic of Serbia, Mr. Dačić. Distinguished Prime Minister, Ms. Ana Brnabić, she's here with us today. Dear Ambassador Schmidt, and our dear colleagues, you've been my colleagues for many years, dear guests, distinguished ambassadors who accepted invitation, ambassadors of the member states. We begin this seminar that we have, of course, organized jointly by the National Assembly and the Nato Parliamentary Assembly. We agreed on this, on holding this seminar here about a year ago, because during this autumn we are signing 15 years since we signed the Partnership for Peace program agreement with NATO. And within these 15 years, we've done a lot together. And during these 3 days ahead of us, you'll hear what it is that we have done. You'll be able to discuss about this with us and with our panelists. I hope that you feel comfortable. I hope you have got a good accommodation here in Serbia. We pay a lot of attention to being good hosts. I saw some of you last night and I heard everything is fine. We'll do our best that in the next 3 days you don't miss anything. We'll try to provide you with everything you need while you are staying with us, while you are our guests. For a start, I don't want to take much of our time. I want to respect the time of our guests who are here to address us. For a start, we'll hear from the Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Ivica Dačić. Mr. Dačić, the floor is yours. Thank you. Distinguished Mr. Šormaz, Ambassador Schmidt, distinguished Prime Minister, dear guests, colleagues, I'd like to bid you welcome to Belgrade, to Serbia, to our National Assembly, that together with the NATO Parliamentary Assembly is a co-organizer of this important seminar, and I'd like you feel like visiting a good friend. I'm glad that Belgrade is hosting the Rose-Roth seminar for the 4th time now. And within this seminar, since 1990, we have had an interparliamentary cooperation between NATO member states and partner countries, including Serbia. We believe that this parliamentary form of our cooperation is an important part of our overall relations, and that our participation in the Parliamentary Assembly of NATO contributes to achieving joint goals and interests stemming from our membership in the Partnership for Peace program. This year we have a lot of reasons to look behind because this is one of the ways we are marking 15 years since Serbia has joined the Partnership for Peace program. The fact that we are holding this meeting in Belgrade speaks enough of the quality of the relations between Serbia and NATO, and it also speaks of the fact that both Serbia and NATO as an organization and all of its members individually have the reason to be satisfied with the results and the level of cooperation achieved so far. By being a member of the Partnership for Peace, Serbia is managing to achieve its goals and interests for which it joined the program 15 years ago. This is our strong commitment to preserve, this speaks of a strong commitment to preserve peace and stability in this part of Europe, and our wish to modernize and make our defense system even more efficient. We believe that this partnership's value particularly lies in the fact that the Serbian representatives participate in international peacekeeping missions within the United Nations, and with this we jointly contribute to peacekeeping actions of the humankind in the crisis areas where this engagement is necessary. I'll use this opportunity to repeat the principal position of the Republic of Serbia that to pursue the military neutrality policy. This is our legal obligation, but it is also the reflection of the opinion of the vast majority of our citizens. We believe that this position also best reflects our view on how international security issues should be tackled, and it reflects our deep feelings, the deep feelings of our people related to the NATO intervention against our country 22 years ago. We are glad that NATO as an organization, its member states, respect Serbia's position and do not see it as an obstacle to have intensive and quality cooperation in mutual interest. Just like Serbia isn't planning to join the NATO, also, NATO does not have a secret plan to make us a member, as a few years ago the then high official of the NATO told me. The membership in the Partnership for Peace is an optimal framework for our cooperation. We are convinced that it provides significant number of possibilities to achieve mutual interest with regard to preserving peace and stabilities, participation in peacekeeping initiatives, and in building prosperity for our citizens and peoples. As for security issues and challenges we are facing, it is clear that for Republic of Serbia, Kosovo and Metohija is an issue number one, and it's the focus of our commitment and attention. Although we are investing huge efforts and have a lot of patience to reach mutually acceptable solution within the EU facilitated dialogue, the solution that will bring peace and stability on the long run in this area, we are still facing numerous security issues in the area of Kosovo and Metohija, where our compatriots are primarily in danger. The generator of these constant security threats is only and exclusively the government in Pristina, and we had an opportunity to see this only a month ago in the north of Kosovo during illegal and violent actions of the special army forces from Pristina. These actions, accompanied by constant efforts to establish and to equip some armed forces of Kosovo, are a direct threat to peace and stability, not just in Kosovo and Metohija, but in the whole region. The Republic of Serbia has never, in any of the occasions, done anything to pose risk or threat to security in the region, especially in the area of Kosovo and Metohija. The fact that Serbia is showing great constraint and patience must not fool anyone to think that we are indecisive about protecting our population in Kosovo and Metohija. On the contrary, with this position, we show that we have the strength and decisiveness to tackle this issue only through political and diplomatic means, because we know this is the only way to reach compromise and to have permanent regulation of Serbian-Albanian relations. In this regard, we expect KFOR mission in Kosovo and Metohija, that is under the command of NATO, to fully implement its tasks and to occasionally condemn every attempt of violence, destabilization in the territory it has jurisdiction of, particularly in the environments in which Serbs live. Our relations with the KFOR mission has from the very beginning been at a high level. We appreciate the efforts of its members to keep peace in Kosovo and Metohija, particularly to help the Serbian community when it's necessary. As a responsible country, we'll continue to cooperate with KFOR in all of its efforts because we respect its mandate and the role it has been appointed. This aspect of our cooperation is among the top of our joint goals and interests, and I use this occasion to invite all NATO member states and you as its representatives in NATO Parliamentary Assembly to do whatever you can to make this mission in Kosovo and Metohija, important mission in Kosovo and Metohija, be really the factor of keeping stability and preventing violence. I am convinced, ladies and gentlemen, that the 15 years behind us is a good guideline and tells us where we should, in which direction we should move forward. The Republic of Serbia is an active and constructive member of the Partnership for Peace program. We wish to continue it. We need each other, and this is a very clear framework for numerous joint activities and cooperation, and we are aware that together we can resist many contemporary challenges and threats. In this spirit, I'd like to bid you welcome, fruitful work, and hopefully we'll meet each other soon on a similar occasion here in Belgrade again. Thank you for your attention. Yes, they're waiting for the translation. Thank you, Mr. Dacic. The next speaker will well, unfortunately only through the video message, will be the President of the Parliamentary Assembly of NATO, Mr. Gerald Connolly. He was elected in 2008 as a Senator of the United States of America, and he has been in the NATO Parliamentary Assembly since 2013. An interesting thing that I learned recently in Lisbon when I spoke to him, we had a long talk about relations between Serbia and the United States of America and about relations between Serbia and NATO. Mr. Connolly was the third head of Mr. Biden's office when he was first elected as a senator, and this is how he entered policy and continued this path until he himself was elected senator. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here with us today, but he sent a video message, so we can hear his message now.
Dear colleagues and friends, greetings from Washington, D.C. Congressional duties unfortunately keep me here, but I could not miss the opportunity to contribute to this important Rose-Roth seminar, the first one in person since April of 2019. This opening session commemorates the 15th anniversary of Serbia's membership in NATO's Partnership for Peace program. The partnership was established in 1994 in recognition that stability and security in the Euro-Atlantic area can only be achieved through cooperation firmly anchored in our shared democratic values, the protection and promotion of fundamental freedoms and human rights, and safeguarding of freedom, justice, and peace through democracy. Even before the creation of the Partnership for Peace program, in the very early days after the fall of the Berlin Wall, our assembly had reached a hand of friendship to NATO's former enemies and sought to engage them in dialogue and support for their democratic transitions. A key tool of this engagement was the Rose-Roth program, initiated in 1990 by then Assembly President Congressman Charlie Rose and Senator Bill Roth. Like Partnership for Peace, the Rose-Roth program is a values-based cooperation. Regardless of whether partner countries seek NATO membership or not, the program's main goals are to promote exchange and mutual understanding and to assist partner parliaments to develop the tools for effective and democratic parliamentary oversight of defense and security in particular. The Serbian National Assembly has been an active participant in the Rose-Roth program ever since its members started participating in assembly meetings in 2002. Successive Serbian delegations have well understood the value of this program. They've embraced it as a helpful forum to move beyond prejudices and hostility and toward greater mutual understanding. They've also sought to use it as an additional tool to strengthen parliamentary processes. As evidence of this engagement, this is the fourth seminar which Serbia hosts in Belgrade. The democratic agenda at the heart of the Rose-Roth program is particularly important and relevant today, as democratic societies inside and outside of the alliance have come under persistent pressure. External enemies of democracy and domestic proponents of illiberalism challenge our democratic values and institutions and the very rule of law itself. My colleagues and I experienced this threat firsthand on January 6th of this year, when our parliament, the United States Congress, came under physical assault. We must recommit ourselves to safeguarding and defending our democratic institutions. Democratic nations in North America, Europe, and beyond must adapt and stand together in countering these challenges from those seeking to undermine faith in our institutions and ultimately to destroy them. Within the Assembly, we propose the establishment of a Democratic Resilience Center at NATO headquarters itself to serve as a clearinghouse of best practices and cross-fertilization of democratic benchmarks for both NATO members as well as NATO partners. As NATO's Partnership for Peace and our Assembly's Rose-Roth program have shown, our democracies are stronger when we learn from each other's experience. Our parliaments have a key role to play in fostering this exchange and strengthening the resilience of our democratic institutions. Over the next few days, as you take stock of the achievements of NATO-Serbia cooperation, domestic reforms, security in the Western Balkans, and attempts by external players to interfere with and destabilize the region, I hope you will keep in mind this defining challenge. I look forward to hearing about your discussions. Security and stability in the Western Balkans remain absolutely critical for Euro-Atlantic security and stability overall. Allied countries recognize this, and we must continue to engage and assist countries in the region in overcoming remaining obstacles to long-term security and stability, including in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the normalization of relations between Belgrade and Pristina. I intend for our Assembly to play its full part in this effort, in close partnership with the parliaments of the region. In closing, let me thank Dragan Sormas, head of the Serbian delegation, and the National Assembly of Serbia for hosting us in Belgrade, and the Swiss government and DCAF for their continuing support of the Rose-Roth seminar program. I wish you productive days ahead. Stay well. Thank you.
After Mr. Connolly and his address, again, something interesting for the public in Serbia. I'll say this before I give the floor to the next speaker. The next speaker will be Mr. Urs Schmidt, Ambassador of Switzerland to the Republic of Serbia. And as we heard from Mr. Connolly, he's someone who has always supported Rose-Roth seminars and helping us hold these seminars. I'm talking about the Swiss government. Switzerland is a partner country of NATO, just like Serbia. Mr. Schmidt is very active. We are thankful to him here in Serbia for his work. He's here with us today. So I invite you to address you to hear his welcome words. Mr. Schmidt, the floor is yours.
Dear Mr. President of the National Assembly, dear Mrs. Prime Minister, dear Mr. President of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, distinguished members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to welcome you on behalf of the Swiss government to this 101st Rose-Roth seminar. Switzerland has been supporting these seminars since the very first moment. we consider it a modest contribution to the efforts of the international community to foster security and confidence building through dialogue. And indeed, since 1990, the Rose-Roth seminars have established themselves as valuable platforms for the exchange of often very diverging thoughts and opinions for the sake of better understanding and searching for common grounds. Serbia has been an active participant and contributor to this intellectual exchange, which has regularly addressed also the specific challenges of the region. Let me recall that in October 2007, this National Assembly hosted the 67th Rose-Roth seminar with a focus on Serbia and Europe, challenges of integration. And in 2015, the 88th Rose-Roth seminar addressed the topic Serbia, the Western Balkans, and the Euro-Atlantic community. Today, I am pleased that the Rose-Roth seminar has returned once more to Belgrade to revisit questions that remain priorities for the future of this region. Switzerland is host of an important diaspora of peoples from all over the Western Balkans. This adds a significant layer to our bilateral relations with all countries of the region. We have a specific interest, a responsibility, and a commitment to contribute to a stable, peaceful, democratically and economically developing Western Balkan region. It is no coincidence that our largest military contribution to peacekeeping worldwide is with KFOR, which we support with logistical services, expert knowledge, and liaison and monitoring teams. An important principle of Swiss participation is that the operation is based on the agreement of the parties involved. It is also a special pleasure for me to highlight that the 101st edition of the Rose-Roth seminar here in Belgrade coincides with the 30th anniversary of Swiss-Serbian bilateral cooperation. What had started with humanitarian assistance in very difficult times in the year 1991 has developed over the years into a comprehensive bilateral cooperation program through which we invest every year about 20 million euro of public aid to support innovation and modernization efforts of the Serbian government, be that in public administration, in education, with a particular focus on dual education, in energy, infrastructure, and many other areas. A specific focus of our cooperation is on democratic governance, specifically also the role of parliaments. Through our engagement, we aim to strengthen the institutionalized representation of citizens and to improve efficiency and transparency of parliamentary work. Switzerland is convinced that parliaments, as a place of democratic debate and decision-making, contribute irreplaceably to the democratic development of states. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in its history, Switzerland is seeking a non-permanent seat on the UN Security Council for the period 2023 to 2024 under the slogan, "A Plus for Peace." The election will take place in June next year. Switzerland is convinced that as a neutral, credible and transparent mediator, it can make a real contribution, a plus, in fact, to global peace and security, and thus also advance other important issues such as sustainable development and innovation. It is not surprising that precisely these issues are also guiding the bilateral Swiss-Serbian cooperation, as well as the Swiss engagement with the Rose-Roth seminars. Behind both commitments stands the conviction that there is no alternative to constructive cooperation of the international community to address the great challenges of humanity, such as maintaining international peace and security. Let me thus conclude with the following message. The Swiss commitment, not only but also to this region, is long-term, and our continued support to the Partnership for Peace and the Rose-Roth seminars is a modest but clear confirmation of this engagement. I join other speakers before me to wish you a successful seminar with interesting, fruitful, and mutually beneficial discussions. Thank you.
Hvala njegovoj ekscelenciji, gospodinu Schmidtu. Sada ćemo imati još jednu video poruku.
And now we'll have one more video message, this time from Mr. Mircea Ioanu. Have I pronounced it well? Mircea Ioanu. He's NATO Deputy Secretary General. He's a deputy of Mr. Stoltenberg. He'll address us through the video message as well.
Dobro jutro. Thank you, all dear friends and colleagues at the Serbian Parliament and the NATO Parliamentary Assembly for hosting us today. And thanks to the Swiss government and the Geneva Center for Security Sector Governance for supporting these already traditional Rose-Roth seminars. We are here today to mark a very special milestone. 15 years of Serbia's participation in NATO's Partnership for Peace program. Serbia's long-standing partnership with NATO is good for the people of Serbia. It is good for the stability of the region. It is also good for the wider transatlantic security. So this partnership matters to us all. And I'm delighted to have the opportunity to talk to you today about the way forward for our partnership and the wider Western Balkans region. Just when I attended the spring session of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly in May 2021, Secretary General Stoltenberg was hosting President Vučić at NATO headquarters from where I'm speaking to you today. At their joint press conference after the meeting, our Secretary General thanked Serbia for its commitment to our cooperation, and he reiterated NATO's commitment to a strong and successful partnership with Serbia in return. Indeed, in recent years, we have deepened and strengthened our partnership in many mutually beneficial ways. NATO works closely with Serbia to support the reform of your security forces and institutions, including through our NATO Military Liaison Office in Belgrade. And we train Serbian officers to participate in international peacekeeping exercises. Over the last 20 years, NATO has helped Serbia destroy over 230 tons of obsolete weapons and ammunition. Through our Science for Peace and Security program, we have worked together on projects from counterterrorism to energy security and from human security to new technologies. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, NATO allies provided much-needed medical aid and equipment, including masks, overalls, and test kits. In return, Serbia makes many valuable contributions to our shared security in Europe and around the world, taking part in peacekeeping missions with the US and the European Union, and working with NATO to train civilian and military medics in Iraq. A few years ago, Serbia hosted NATO's biggest civil emergency exercise, helping NATO allies and partners to better deal with natural disasters like floods or forest fires. NATO and Serbia should continue working together on things that matter to us both, including improving our civil emergency planning and combating the threat of radicalization. And of course, in continuing to support a safe and peaceful Western Balkans. NATO has been committed to peace and stability in the Western Balkans for decades. This requires our continued collective effort. We all have a role to play in this. And in particular you, as parliamentarians and political leaders. As our NATO leaders restated at their June summit of 2021, They reconfirm the commitment of our alliance to this region, and this commitment is stronger than ever today. Our KFOR mission is the most tangible demonstration of these efforts, which has helped to keep the peace for more than 20 years. KFOR provides a safe and secure environment and guarantees freedom of movement for the benefit of all communities in Kosovo, based on the UN Security Council mandate. NATO allies are firmly committed to KFOR and to its important mission. We continue to support the EU-facilitated dialogue and other efforts to normalize relations between Belgrade and Pristina. The Belgrade-Pristina dialogue is the platform to find a long-lasting solution that respects the rights of all communities, and to build a lasting peace that guarantees a better and more prosperous future for all. NATO's activities and policies, including our open door policy, help to build stability and cooperation in the Western Balkans. And we now count more NATO allies than NATO partners in the region. At the same time, we fully respect Serbia's policy of military neutrality. As sovereign nations, we should all retain the right to choose our own path. As we look to a more dangerous and competitive world, NATO's partnerships, both near and far, old or new, will only become more important. The global balance of power is shifting. Strategic competition between states is increasing. And our democratic values and the rules-based global order are under pressure like never before. At the same time, we face more sophisticated cyber attacks, disinformation, terrorist threats, and the security impacts of climate change. So no country or continent is immune, including the countries of the Western Balkans. And while there are all different challenges, we do not have the luxury of deciding which we'll respond to. We must, and we will, address them all at the same time. This is why NATO leaders at our Brussels summit this summer took bold decisions to tackle today's and tomorrow's threats, and to tackle them together in NATO and with our network of partners around the world. In Brussels, we agreed an ambitious agenda for our future security. It is what we call NATO 2030. Concretely, we are continuing to strengthen our deterrence and defense by investing more in our security, including high-end capabilities, and by boosting the readiness of our forces. At the same time, we are stepping up to face new challenges, strengthening our resilience, increasing our cyber defenses, and addressing the security impacts of climate change. To make sure we reduce vulnerabilities and remain ready to address any threat from any direction, whether man-made or natural. We are also investing in the latest technologies to sharpen our technological edge. Just last month, we took concrete steps to establish a new Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic, DIANA, and $1 billion innovation fund in NATO. Together, we are continuing to tackle instability and fight terrorism by stepping up our training and capacity building support for partners. And finally, we are deepening and broadening our relations with other countries and organizations that share our vision and democratic values, to safeguard the rule-based international order that underpins our peace and security in this more dangerous and more competitive world than ever. So our long-standing partnerships with the countries of the Western Balkans, including with Serbia, are a vital part of this. I know we can count on our continued strong relationship, and I look forward to 15 more years, and even more, of a constructive and fruitful NATO-Serbia partnership that brings tangible benefits to us all. So thank you, hvala. I wish you very productive days in Belgrade, and I look forward to be in person in one of our next meetings. Good luck, and we can count on you, you can count on us.
Čućete ovih dana da
These days, you'll hear that Serbia has had an excellent relations with NATO, as we could hear from Mr. Joanna, who was a member of the Romanian delegation to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly over the past several years. I've met a lot of people who've been very successful. Then they got some other functions. For example, the mayor of Bratislava was a member of the NATO parliamentary delegation. I met some people who are now ministers of foreign affairs. Mr. Dacic says, so it means that you hope you are going to advance in career. No, I'm pleased with my position. I don't want to pursue some other functions. And you know, you're our guests, but political scene in Serbia is used to President, to the Speaker Dacic and me, and to our discussions. Now it is my great pleasure to announce the Prime Minister of the Republic of Serbia as a keynote speaker, Miss Ana Brnabić. I'll read something in English to present her to you in the rightful manner.
In 2016, she was elected Minister of Public Administration and Local Self-Government, and she held the position until the election of the Prime Minister. As Minister of Public Administration and Local Self-Government, she particularly worked on the reform of public administration through introduction of e-government in Serbia. She is a member of a group, New Leaders for Europe, of the World Economic Forum and the advisory board of the organization World Minds, which brings together the world's most important innovators from all fields.
Madam Brnabić has been the Prime Minister of a very successful government, and is a Prime Minister of a very successful government that has, if not the biggest, that one of the greatest successes in Europe. It has had a stable economic growth, even during the pandemic that we are all tackling with. But something in particular I'd like to emphasize is this e-government and digitalization of Serbia that, ever since she took over this project, has really started functioning here in Serbia in a way which can compete with the EU member states. And we know that while it's in her hands, it's going to function even more better. After Ms. Brnabić's address, we'll have questions and answers session. Thank you. Ms. Brnabić, the floor is yours. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, I'd like to bid you welcome to the Republic of Serbia. Dear Mr. Šormaz, distinguished Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of Serbia, Mr. Dacic, distinguished heads of delegations, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished dear friends and colleagues. I'd like not to repeat what the Speaker of the National Assembly has already said, but we have three main topics. The first one is the overall cooperation between Serbia and NATO alliance. The second one is regional cooperation, security, and the third one is the issue of Kosovo and Metohija. As regards the overall cooperation with NATO, we are a military neutral country which does not aspire to become a full-fledged member of NATO. However, at every moment we wish to improve political dialogue and partnership cooperation within the available mechanisms provided by the Partnership for Peace program, and all of this for the purpose of contributing to preserving peace and stability both in region and around the world. The military neutrality policy certainly does not mean self-isolation. It entails readiness, our readiness for cooperation and for sharing responsibilities. I'm particularly glad that over the recent period of time, the Republic of Serbia has had a very good communication with the NATO, and Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has had a particularly important role in this, and I'm using this opportunity to extend my gratitude as the Prime Minister of Serbia to thank him for openness for cooperation with Serbia. As we could hear, Mr. Vučić visited NATO headquarters in Brussels in 2017, and Mr. Stoltenberg visited Serbia in the beginning of October 2018 during the Serbia 2018 exercise. That was the largest civil emergency exercise held in this area. We appreciate the position of Serbia and Mr. Stoltenberg to respect each country's sovereignty and right to choose its security arrangements. Serbia is building up a position of a reliable and predictable partner to the NATO, and it is in our interest to continue the positive agenda and to improve joint cooperation in mutual interest. And what I would like to particularly emphasize today is that during the implementation of the second cycles of IPAP, individual action plan for Serbia and NATO, that was for the period 2019-2021. So this cycle is finishing today, and we are ready in consultations with our partners from NATO to start the newly established mechanism of cooperation. I'm personally very much satisfied with the cooperation achieved in the realization of cooperation in the field of high technology within the science program. Our citizens are not very much familiar with this. I think this should be more promoted, in particular because this is in line with the priorities of the Republic of the government of the Republic of Serbia, both economically and politically. I'm glad that within this Science for Peace and Security program, we have managed to realize over 40 joint projects, and I'm glad that in February, NATO presented 3 young women who are pioneers when it comes to technology within this Partnership for Peace program. We will fully be committed in future as the government of the Republic of Serbia to the following. Namely, in April, we started implementing new multi-annual programs, batteries on the basis of CO, and this project has been supported by the NATO through this program. The aim of this project is the new generation of batteries without lithium that are based on nanotechnology and the oxygen gained through NATO through biomass. And we are cooperating with the technology faculty of in Podgorica, and we are including those countries that we are among those countries that are starting to invest in development of a new carbon-based batteries. Also, we are cooperating with NATO in cooperation of 1325 resolution of the United Nations Security Council, which is focused on gender equality, which is also one of the priorities of the government of the Republic of Serbia. And our government in the world is known as one of the most gender-balanced governments. So we have over 50% of women at the National Assembly, 40% 40% of MPs are women. So in this regard, I wanted to emphasize this form of cooperation with the NATO. Serbia is also one of the leaders in the implementation of the integrity building NATO program dedicated to building up integrity, prosperity and responsibility, and a reduction of corruption in defense and security sector. And there is a great cooperation in the field of civil cooperation in the cases in the, of emergencies. We have good cooperation with the Atlantic Center for responding to disasters. This is very important. This type of cooperation is very important for us. Our military forces actively participate in international peacekeeping missions and operations. We are currently participating in 3 multinational operations with 28 members. This is with the EU, and we are participating in the 5 United Nations missions with 263 members. We are members of the coalition fighting against Daesh, and we are following the fight against terrorism as one of the greatest challenges faced by Europe and the world in general. Now I'll speak about the regional cooperation and security. For Serbia, and I want just to be clear, I use this occasion to reiterate that peace and stability in the region is the main condition for progress of each country in this region, individual, but progress of the region in general. We are a comparatively small region, so any kind of instability, insecurity, any kind of turbulence in any part of our region affect our entire region. Therefore, of course, European integration is one of our top priorities, but another top priority is regional peace, cooperation, and networking and connecting is among the top of our priorities. We are consistently pursuing the non-interference policy. We are not interfering in the policy of our internal policy of our neighbors. I think it's up to the political will of all the stakeholders to exit the vicious circles of the past, and we should all turn to future economic development and connecting. And in this regard, the President of the Republic of Serbia, Mr. Vučić, is one of the initiator of the Open Balkans initiative aimed at strong market connectivity of the region. It is an opportunity for the entire region to strengthen its infrastructure. The Open Balkans initiative entails 4 freedoms on which the EU is based. This is the freedom of movement of people, goods, capital, and services. And this is, of course, not replacement for our European integration. However, it is in line with all other regional initiatives, such as the Berlin process, an attempt to be unique in some areas, and we are trying to ensure higher quality of life for all the people living in this region, to provide them with a different future as compared to our common past. As regards Kosovo and Metohija, it is a particularly important segment of NATO-Serbia relations. So this the dialogue in Kosovo and Metohija is important, and we support engagement of KFOR in Kosovo and Metohija in their unbiased pursuance of their mandate provided to them by the Resolution 1244 by the United Nations Security Council, ensuring freedom of movement for all. Unfortunately, the Serbs in Kosovo and Metohija, just like our cultural, historical, and religious heritage, is facing security risks on a daily basis. This year, in 2021, has been particularly difficult. Since the beginning, we've had as many as 115 ethnically motivated incidents precedence. And over the past period of time, we have had 9 attacks of heavily armed special police forces in the north of Kosovo and Metohija. I believe that for all of us, security forces and for the EU and for all other international actors, it is particularly not good that the place of the cultural heritage where religious heritage is still under the security, under the defense of NATO and KFOR, and Europa Nostra has pronounced monastery Dečani as particularly valuable heritage. When it comes to the activities of building up Pristina's capacities to participate in peacekeeping missions and announcing military service, mandatory military service, and building up military base. Well, all of this contributes to instability in the field. It is not in line, it is in the opposition of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1244. It is not in line with the Brussels Agreement, and it is not in line with the internal acts of Pristina, such as the Constitution of Kosovo. We are aware of the fact that there are numerous issues from the past that we should tackle gradually. Our priorities are turn towards future and to enable the economic development of the entire region. Serbia believes that the issues that burden our relations should be tackled responsibly, that we should understand the position of the others and find a way to reach mutually agreeable solutions that will be sustainable, that will be in the interest of all of our citizens' regional peace and stability. And it's good that as a military neutral country, through the Partnership for Peace program, we have a good dialogue and good cooperation with the NATO, which is confirmed by today's meeting. And thank you all for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Prime Minister Ana Brnabić. Before we continue to the time of questions and answers, please just raise your hands if any of you would like to put a question to our Madam Prime Minister. In the meantime, I'm going to say a couple of things and to add a few issues. Those data you heard our Madam Prime Minister mention concerning peacekeeping missions and UN missions, Serbia as such, with such a number of people we are contributing to peacekeeping mission, is the 7th in Europe according to the number of participants, although we are not the 7th biggest state in Europe. And last week in the Ministry of Defense, we discussed with the people from USA Ministry of Defense to start participating together with the US contingent in peacekeeping missions, and that would significantly increase our engagement and Serbia's participation in such missions around the world, which brings this region and Serbia itself to a new situation, and we become exporter of peace and stability, and we are not the one as we were 30 years ago, when we were part of the instability in the world, but now we contribute to the peace and stability in the world. Open Balkans initiatives is in favor of that, and within this initiative we have Albania, North Macedonia. Their representatives are here today with us. On my left-hand side is the delegation of Serbia. You can see them. This is the Serbia's delegation to NATO. And those Bosnia and Herzegovina is represented by male MPs and Montenegro as well. So we are going to convince them to include more women. You won't mind my jokes considering gender equality. And now we can proceed with questions and answers. Is there anybody who applied first for the floor? Somebody has to break the ice. Yes, dear colleague, madam, take the floor. She comes from North Macedonia.
I have a question which is formed by the speech of His Excellency Urs Schmidt and the Prime Minister of Serbia, Ms. Ana Brnabić. As the ambassador of Switzerland said, NATO is committed more than ever to the Western Balkan countries. And I appreciate that being a member, of course, part of this Western Balkans. But we all know that there are many open disputes or questions among different countries in Western Balkans. Like, for example, North Macedonia with Greece, which is already solved, but not 100%, I would say, because one part of our population accepts it and one part does not accept. North Macedonia and Bulgaria, which is a big dispute related to the history, and a dispute between Serbia and Kosovo, which was mentioned by Mr. Ivica Dačić and Ms. Ana Brnabić. And if we followed carefully the speech of Ms. Ana Brnabić, we heard many times so-called Kosovo forces, so-called this and so-called that. So, which is your opinion? Can we talk or think about a real integration of this region if we still go on and call each other with so-called this and so-called that? And what kind of impact this might have toward the security of the region if we do not accept each other as we are? Thank you.
Well, okay, all right. I'm going to answer your question, but I'm not sure whether the question was directed to Ambassador or to me. Since you represent North Macedonia, I'd like to thank North Macedonia for participation in initiative, the Open Balkans. I think this is very important initiative, and it is one of the initiatives that are looking towards future, and it just is a precondition, part of the precondition for better future. So that we can travel without passports, using just IDs, and without working licenses, and that young people can stay in the region when they see opening prospects for better jobs, for more many more jobs and coming investments, and if they would be able to travel around region and make home in the region. And I would like to reiterate the invitation to the other countries in the region, including Pristina, to join the Open Balkans initiatives. And I'd like to say that the citizens living in the region would have, in that way, unbelievably better benefits from this initiative. And this initiative is just distinguishes itself from other initiatives in the region because it was led by us living in the region. I'd like to underline also the full support that the Republic of Serbia is extending to the North Macedonia and Albania for the purpose of for getting their date of opening negotiations with the EU. I think that North Macedonia and Albania deserve that, really. And I would like to... We always say that tell that to our EU partners, that it would be in the interest of more prosperous regions if North Macedonia and Albania open as soon as possible the negotiations with the EU. And it's also important that the EU works with the Bosnia and Herzegovina on the same issue, not to neglect Bosnia and Herzegovina and not to have them lagging in the process, because it's not good for all of us in the region to be different, actually one country to be leading and leave others behind. Concerning Pristina institutions and what I call in my speech so-called security forces, so-called the Republic of Kosovo, I think that it is, first of all, important to accept that there are differences between us, that we have different positions. Concerning Republic of Serbia, I here represent the government of the Republic of Serbia, and we do not accept or recognize the unilaterally declared independence of Kosovo. This is not in line neither with our constitution nor with the UN Security Council Resolution 1244. And Kosovo, as such, does not have a seat in the United Nations. It's not internationally recognized entity. So what I'm saying is in line with all international norms and international law, and in line with the Constitution of the Republic of Serbia, which I have to observe as the Prime Minister. When talking about some issues such as so-called Kosovo army military, I have to add that establishing such structures in the way that it was done within the institutions in Kosovo is not in line with their internal acts, with their constitution, because their constitution clearly speaks about the situation. If such events happen, then the Serbs from Kosovo should give their support. And we have the situation that nobody asks Kosovo Serbs about these issues. So Kosovo didn't respect or observe its own acts, legal acts, such as constitution. So I think it's clear situation and why I speak in this manner, and that it is clear that the Republic of Serbia is fully committed, sincerely committed to dialogue with Pristina, and that we think that it would be impossible to reach agreement on normalization of relations which will be mutually accepted and which will be long-term sustainable without reaching this solution. I haven't seen the readiness on Pristina side for such a dialogue, and many assaults on Serbs in Kosovo and Metohija speak in favor of that, my opinion, and because they do not want to implement Brussels Agreement. The basis of Brussels Agreement is establishment of Serb municipalities. This agreement was signed in 2013. Serbia has fulfilled all the conditions mentioned in this Brussels Agreement. And when talking about the dialogue with Pristina, we talk about implementing this first Brussels Agreement, and it's senseless to reach another agreement on normalization of relations if Pristina hasn't fulfilled everything provided by the first Brussels Agreement on relations. So this is all what I said is in line with the situation on the ground and how the Kosovo is perceived by international organizations such as United Nations, and over 50 states of United Nations didn't recognize the unilaterally declared independence of Kosovo, of our actually province, autonomous province of Kosovo. But let's turn to the future. We have to see how we can overcome these issues and how to reach a long-lasting peace and stability, and because it won't provide us with better standard of life in this region. And when the Prime Minister of Albin Kurti says that the dialogue with Belgrade is not among his first priorities, but incomes in Kosovo, I think that means that he is actually supposed to have completed the dialogue with Belgrade first, because this is a preconditions for better jobs, better paid jobs, and that without better incomes there is not prosperity. Thank you very much.
Okay, I must add one more thing that hasn't been said here. Mr. Yanao, who has addressed us, is a member, is a national of a country that has not recognized the unilaterally declared independence of Kosovo and Metohija, and all the documents of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly only talk about Kosovo, not about the Republic of Kosovo. So we have this status neutrality. So here we have to keep this status neutrality. Our colleagues from the Pristina's parliament, where also the Serbian list is participating, are presented here as an assembly of Kosovo, right? Not as the Republic of Kosovo. Okay. Until this issue is tackled in line with the international law and UN Security Council Resolution 1244, Serbia will act like this. As the Madam Prime Minister has said, we will always insist on reaching the solution peacefully and through talks. Is there anyone else who'd like to take the floor to ask a question, to pose a question to the Prime Minister? I'm sorry, as you have mentioned me, I want to welcome all of you who are from North Macedonia and from other former Yugoslav countries. This is your hall, this is your room, this used to be the hall of former Yugoslavia. The building used to be the building of former Yugoslavia and the assembly of the former Yugoslavia. When you enter this building, the first thing you see is the sculpture of the Croatian King Tomislav. The second thing you see on the other side is the Slovenian Knez Kocev, and then you can see Karađorđe and King Dušan of Serbia. And we have kept all of them, regardless of the fact that Yugoslavia as such no longer exists. On the other hand, perhaps you're a bit younger than we are. Not perhaps, but certainly you are younger than we are. But I think that Ilya and I remember that here we had the so-called Council of States and Provinces, of the republics and provinces, and we knew very well which were republics and which were provinces. The republics of the former Yugoslavia were Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, Serbia, and Macedonia. Those were republics. This was the reason why former Federal Republic of Yugoslavia recognized what used to be the so-called Republic of Macedonia. And Greece, in every meeting, Greece pointed out that it was against the name the Republic of Macedonia. Even the United Nations, as you know, had this, expression, former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. Perhaps many of you perhaps thought that Greeks are boring because of this. But now you're called North Macedonia. What I'm trying to say is the following. Everything is relative, you know. And here we have a situation, as you know, where the former Yugoslav republics have the right to self-determination. Provinces do not have this right. It was concluded by the Commission of Baden-Ter, because then Vojvodina as another province would have the same right. So from the aspect of international law, we are not saying the so-called Kosovo, we are saying the so-called independent state of Kosovo. Why should we say the so-called Kosovo? I mean, Kosovo is the name that is of Serbian origin. It's the name of Serbian origin. But it's irrelevant. I think this now is the topic that you mentioned, that on our side, you know, nobody likes it if you come here and preach to someone on how we should behave in our internal policy. Of course, you have the right to say this, but you have to understand that this is our issue. And we are not interfering in how you will you have relations in your countries and what your order in your country will be, so please do not interfere with ours. And our country, the Republic of Serbia, that remained after the former Yugoslavia, is the Republic of Serbia together with Kosovo and Metohija. Thank you.
I see Hungary, I don't see name. Sorry? Okay, until after.
Thank you very
First
much.
Lady.
It is quite good you see Hungary. My name is Agnes Fradi from Hungary, and I would like to raise the horizon a little bit from the security point of view. In the North Atlantic region, we are facing a number of challenges, one of them being Russia, the other being China. I would like to ask the panelists, especially Prime Minister of Serbia, how do you see Russia's role in the Western Balkans, especially with special attention to hybrid warfare? We saw in Europe, and we saw the consequences of the hybrid warfare in Europe in the 2015 immigration crisis, where Russia was using, we all know, fake news, and we are going to talk about fake news, used fake news in order to make Europe weaker, and especially use that, of course, not just in the Western Balkans, but in other European countries, including my homeland. The second is China. China is, besides technologies, using different methods to have influence on the North Atlantic Alliance and, of course, on our friends in the Western Balkans. They are using special loans. One of them being a loan which I criticize in my country because I'm coming from the opposition. This is the Budapest-Belgrade railway loan, but we saw it in the Western Balkans, how China was using financial influence, which is a form of security issue. So I would like to ask the Prime Minister of Serbia and, of course, any of the panelists, honorable colleagues, how do you see these new types of security challenges and new methods we are seeing being our countries, our alliance and our partnerships being influenced? So it's not the army anymore what we see. Of course, we see in certain countries, in neighboring Hungary, we saw it in Ukraine, but in the Western Balkans, we see it with different methods. So I would like to ask your opinion about that. Thank you very much.
Questions? Attila, now.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Attila Mesterházy, and I'm also from Hungary. I'm the former chair of this parliament, and I'm the vice chair. It's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you very much, Dragan, for your leadership and organization, because this is a good thing to be in person and talk to each other and have some possibilities for networking. My question is more about the EU integration, because it's perhaps not directly connected to security, but in my opinion, it's really a matter of security also in a way. So I would like to ask the Prime Minister that how would you evaluate the process? How is it, where is which stage are you in now? The country's preparedness, are you, satisfied with this process? Because from our side, as Hungarian, we would like to push a little bit more this process, because for us it's more important to have you and the Western Balkan countries in this family. So that's why I would like to know your opinion. How do you think the pace and how much are you satisfied with this process? Thank you very much.
My friend from Ukraine, Yahor.
Thank you first of all for organization of this seminar, and thank you, Dragan, for your invitation to Serbia. If you need some recommendation for your further promotion, you can count on me in your country. Well, actually, I have questions for Prime Minister and Speaker.
You have to take off.
Oh, okay, sorry. As you know, we have a war in Ukraine with Russian Federation, and actually violation of human rights in Crimea, and NATO and NATO PA have a strong position about non-recognition of occupation of Crimea and recognition of an aggressor of Russian Federation. And also, we have good relations with Serbia, Ukraine and Serbia, and we appreciate these relations. However, we do expect your strong position about non-recognition of Crimea, of occupation of Crimea, I mean, of the recognition of violation of human rights on these territories, and actually aggression of Russian Federation against Ukraine. So, I would like to ask of your further steps in these terms, in these respects. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to answer all the questions at once without taking too much of your time. First of all, let me answer the question related to the European integration and where we stand in the whole process. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the huge support of Hungary to the Serbian European integration, and to thank you for the clear promotion of the enlargement policy of the EU. I believe that the enlargement policy is equally important for the EU and the Western Balkans, and it is important for the Western Balkans to find its place in the EU, but on the other hand, for security, stability, and the EU foreign policy, I believe it is very important for the Western Balkans, for the EU, to make the Western Balkans its part. Of course, there are some EU member states that are skeptical with regard to the enlargement policy. They are not eager to give some positive signals, neither to Serbia or anyone else in the Western Balkan region. But, it's up to us to do our part of the job, particularly as regards the reform in the field of rule of law. This is the first priority of the government in this term of office. We were the first who accepted the new methodology proposed by Mr. Macron, the French president. During this term of office, our government adjusted our administration to the new methodology at this moment. We are prepared to open 2 clusters, negotiating clusters, hopefully at the Intergovernmental Conference during the Slovenian presidency that will be held, I guess, in December. I hope we will open at least 1, if not both clusters. So in this regard, we are continuing with the reforms. We are continuing to do our part of the job. I'd like to clearly emphasize that reforms we are not conducting them just for the sake of the European integration. We see these reforms as the manner as a way to improve the life quality of people in the Republic of Serbia, to improve our public governments and our economy. So we would pursue and conduct these reforms. However, these reforms will lead us to the EU membership. I hope that this EU accession to the EU will happen sooner than later, because I think it's good for the EU as well, not just for us. But the pace, the dynamics will depend on the EU member states. And like I said, to conclude with this, about the European integration, I think it's very important that we stick together here in the region when it comes to the European integration. I think it's very important for us to support and help each other. And I think that for the stability and security of the region, it's important that North Macedonia and Albania start negotiations with the EU as soon as possible, and that Bosnia and Herzegovina gets the status of a candidate country to prepare for the negotiations. I think that's pivotal for the long-term stability and security of the region, because, finally, many people can criticize EU for many things, but no one can criticize it and say that everyone cannot criticize the EU for being the largest peacekeeping project in the history of humanity, that has brought decades of peace that Europe has never had in its history before, and that as such, peace.
It's an economic project and not just peacekeeping. And we hope it will extend on the Western Balkans region. Concerning the influence of Russia and China, I would say that in that regard, I see not too much or disruptive influence of either Russia or China in the sense of jeopardizing Europe or any European order. Neither I regard it as a defense threat. Concerning Russia, our relations with the Russian Federations in the first place concern economic domain and in the domain of energy, and these relations are like other European countries' relations with the Russian Federation. Our position is principled towards the Russian Federation, and our position concerning our relations with China and Russia is that we are just going straight forward to the EU membership, and the European Union also likes that and underpins that, and we have the pursuing policy of improvement of relations with other partners like Russia, China, USA, United Arab Emirates, India. This is in interest of the Republic of Serbia and its citizens, because we have lost a lot of time. We are lagging behind concerning economic domain, and we want to make up for that. And it's in our interest to have good relations with these countries, because it means better economic development. The Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China has never done anything against us. And having in mind the influence of China in recent times and its presence in the Western Balkans, 90% of Chinese investments in Europe are present and invested actually in the Western Europe, and I'd say in the Central European member states, 90% of Chinese investments goes there to the EU, and in that sense, it's not fair, it's not correct to discuss Chinese investments in this part of the region, because this part of the Europe, because they cannot be compared according to its extent to the investments of Chinese investment within the Western Europe. Concerning special loans of the National People's Republic of China, we are not being jeopardized. We are pursuing consistent policy concerning public debt, and we remained of 60%. We have 60% of our public debt within our GDP during this COVID time, and we hope that it will amount to 50% of our GDP, and we plan to decrease it during 2022, and we've got a permanent arrangements with International Monetary Fund, and if we have them as a objective financial monitor, which can guarantee for the financial stability of Serbia. So we've got no problems concerning in this field that can lead us to bad position and to have over that that can influence our foreign policy. It is not the case. So we are clearly committed to EU membership, but of course maintaining the good relations with all states, and that includes the Russian Federation, China, USA, Turkey, India, United Arab Emirates, and other countries, and all that can contribute to the best possible prospect of the Republic of Serbia and its citizens. And we don't regard these activities of Serbia as contradictory. We regard it as elements that assist to our readiness for fully fledged EU membership. And concerning the position towards Crimea, the position of the Republic of Serbia stays unchanged. It's consistent, principled, and in line with international law that we observe fully, and I think that others should observe it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to add one sentence. As you asked me this, yeah, you spoke about fake news. Yeah, fake news. You know, here in Serbia, witnessed when Bill Clinton said that Serbs were to be blamed for both the First and the Second World War and for the Holocaust. I mean, are you aware of this? Can anything be worse than this? We witnessed when Scharping, who was the defense minister of Germany, saying that Serbs have 100 hostages Albanian hostages on the stadium in Pristina. And only a week later, no one apologized for this or said that it wasn't true, of course. Not a single country in the world had such fake news and faced such fake news as we have faced. So with all due respect to all you are saying about Russia and China, we tackled our relations with Russia in 1948, as long as in 1948. Unlike your socialist bloc, you were waiting for 1990, 1991 to tackle the issues. Thank you. Madam Prime Minister has other obligations. We are going to have a very good continuation of this. The next session will be moderated by Ms. Attila, and we will have the Minister of Defense of the Republic of Serbia, Ms. Stefanovic. I'd like us to thank the Prime Minister with an applause and to thank the other panelists. We will continue immediately. Yeah, we'll call you for the family photo. You can leave now, he's saying to the speaker. I hope that my colleagues from Portugal are not angry about what happened last night. Serbia will go directly to the World Championship in football, and Portugal will have to continue with the qualifications. We'll cheer for you. Let's move on. Attila is here, and I bid you goodbye. We'll see each other.